So before we dive in, I want to talk just a bit about topology theory and the different types of topology we have. Now, we touched based on this earlier in this, and we started with sculpting topology. So when we went with sculpting topology, you might remember with things like the legs and the body and the arms, we weren't really worried about muscles. What we were worried about is kind of getting even quads. And the reason why is with this, we're going to be going with the subdivision method, and we want to get a nice even plane so we don't have stretching when we're sculpting. And that's the goal of the sculpting topology. Animation topology is different because animation cares about moving and it also cares about being optimized. So depending on if you're going into games or film, this is going to be different. I'll use an example of something like a mobile game. We're not going to do this for a mobile game, but let's say we're working on a very low-end mobile game. What would a character leg look like? On the game I'm currently working on, it's very low end. So we might have something like that for the torso. Then coming down to the knee, we might have a single edge loop for the knee. Coming down to the ankle, a single edge loop for the ankle, and then something coming out here for the foot. And this would be our topology. It'd be very minimal as we can get. Not really ideal, but that's going to be exactly what we need for both optimization and for animation. So it moves and it is lightweight. Now compare this to sculpting topology, and sculpting topology, we're going to have this, similar shape if we wanted to sculpt it, but all these even quads. Right, so that's the big difference between these two, is that sculpting, nice even quads across the surface, density for the purpose of making our brush strokes and our detail show up. Animation is going to be optimized, so we're going to use minimal where possible. We don't want to trace absolutely everything, and part of that is because we're going to get our detail back through textures, so I want to emphasize that. The other reason is just mobility. So for example, in order to make a leg bend, really, you just need one edge loop at the end of the day to be able to bend a leg and make it work. It's usually better to have about 3, so that works. And usually for the sake of form, we do end up with some running along the side. So we're not going to do like a mobile retopology here. We're going to use just kind of a baseline standard retopologize you might see for something like a film or maybe a higher end video game. And then we're going to take a look at how maps kind of tie into it and kind of just generally discuss that so you can understand the full process. But I wanted to touch base on that going into this so you can understand our goal here is going to be for animation. When we first started, we started with sculpting. Now we're going to talk a bit about animation. All right, let's go ahead and get started. If you haven't yet, go ahead and set your symmetry to World X. Select your character and go ahead and make sure it's in object mode and click Make Live. Now we're going to start with the face, and the area I like to start with first is the eyes. So the eyes use radial topology. That means we're going to go in a circle around the eye, like so, and we want the edge loops to flow in that direction. Now, you might also wonder, how many edge loops do you need in an eye? Is there a set number? And the answer is no, there's not really a magical number. It's going to depend on what you need to use it for. We're just going to kind of do a standard pass at this, what might be used generically for film. So kind of just a middle of the road pass, not anything for games, not anything for high-end simulations or anything like that. So just kind of be mindful of that. What that means is we can leverage Smooth Preview, that's the 3 button inside of Maya, to get some subdivision in there, and that's going to kind of be our goal for this. If you're going for games, the exact same techniques, the exact same tools are going to be used. You're just going to adjust the vertex count for your target, be it for mobile or next generation or virtual reality. It's all going to kind of vary, but the same principles are going to be in place. So let's get started taking a look at how to set up that radial topology. The way we're going to do it is just come to the eyelid here, click on Quad Draw, and I'll lay down my first quad going this way. Now from here, I'm just going to hit Tab, and I'm going to pull out the next quad. And you're going to notice I'm going to do this pretty large and blocky. This is how I like to start my topology. You don't want to have a whole bunch of small pieces, because then you got to connect everything together. Usually the best way to approach topology is to get the large forms and get their functionality in place, and then come back later and refine. Now, I do want to make sure I have an even number going across here. That is one thing that is nice to have with the eyes. It helps with them closing. And you do have to be careful with Maya here. Quad Draw likes to go behind things. It's a bit of a challenge. But basically, we want to find the midpoint and just count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a nice area for the midpoint, and I think that's good. So that's going to give us 8 total around the top, 8 around the bottom, 16 in total, and the eye, and I think that works. So let's get down to the bottom and give these about 8. So I'm just going to come here, draw this out, and try and get to the midsection here with 4, and then just do the same over here. And I think that should do it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you generally want to try and line these up so they're even for the purpose of blinking. So if you have 8 on top, you should have 8 on bottom, and their vertices should line up relatively close. When it comes to rigging, you do get to leverage a lot of different things. You get to leverage joints to influence things. You can leverage deformers. You can leverage blend shapes. So there's a lot of ways to make them fit together perfectly, but getting to the even number is really nice. Now, the reason this is called radial topology is it goes in a circle. So what we can do is we can add a couple edge loops around here. Usually 2 is good. You don't really want a huge crowd. If you're doing a lower end video game, 1 can be enough, and in some cases 0. So it just kind of varies. In this case, I'll just do 1 for now. Now, we might want to set up some layers to help us manage things here. So I'm going to take my eye base mesh here and just attach it to a layer and set that to a reference and just name this eyes. That way I can toggle this on and off so we can see these. And just go into object mode here and continue our quad draw. But that's going to get this set up. Now, the eyes actually go for a decent distance in this radial fashion. So what we generally see is along this brow ridge that we have, that we've constructed here, down over the zygomatic and down into here, this tends to be all radial geometry coming from the eye. So we can go ahead and get that set up there. I'll just go ahead and start by coming in and laying down the first edge by hitting tab. And I'll just use tab here to pull these out and over. And you'll notice I'm going real big and real empty to begin with. And the reason why is, remember, it's better to just lay down the base functionality and then come back in and refine later. So we can always add edge loops into here, especially since we know this is going to be a radial surface, meaning it's going to go in a circle. We can add as many edge loops as we need to get this functionality in place. And this is all going to facilitate eye movement and blinking. So this whole area, that's going to be the purpose it's going to serve. And we can nudge this around here to get a nice look to this area. And then I might want to inform it a bit by the model. So for example, here's a ridge. We can add an edge loop there. That's going to give us that elevation. And that's probably all we need, if I'm going to be completely honest. We could maybe nudge it down here to be a little bit more in the midsection, but you really don't need to go super heavy and super dense when it comes to topology. You can actually keep things quite light, especially if you're going to do subdivision. Ironically, video game characters actually tend to be denser than film characters from the sheer fact that film characters are going to leverage subdivision later. So when you think of like a film character, a lot of the times it actually has a lot of low poly detail that's just designed to subdivide. So take some time to adjust those, but that's going to be the base setup there for the eyes. Now, inside the eye, we're going to have something called an eye pocket. And what we're essentially going to do is come in here and go over the eyelid. I didn't quite give my eye enough thickness here for this. I should have basically a little ledge here that the eyelashes will attach to. Mine kind of got lost in the smoothing process, I think. Not a big deal. We can always sculpt this back in after the fact. As long as the topology is there, it will support it. We could also physically model it in Maya if we wanted to, but we want to make sure we get the detail projection in ZBrush, so we're not going to worry about it too much. But the main thing is to make sure it has the support topology there, and that's what I'm doing here. So I'm just holding tab again and just pulling out to get this really thin ledge, which is essentially the flap of my eyelid. So I'll just keep that around, like so. And then we can start pulling this to create the inside of the eye. And you'll see I'm kind of going inside of the eye to do this. I'm just going to pull this down, and just like I did along the outside, and start filling this in. Now, this is where I may have wanted to take a little bit more time in ZBrush getting this to look clean. And I'm guilty of doing this in production environments too, kind of fudging the inside of the eye and not really taking time with it. Since this was kind of an anatomy study, I didn't originally intend to do a retopology section, but I decided to do it kind of as bonus content because personally, if I was learning how to make a human, I'd want to learn how to make it the right way and all the way. So I've kind of thrown this in, but this is an area we may want to revisit and clean up. And at this point, if you wanted to just backpedal and go do that now, you could. And basically, it would just entail making the inside look as clean as the outside in terms of the placement, where it's connecting to, all that stuff. Well, let's just go ahead and continue pulling these out and getting that interior in here. Now I want to make sure those corners kind of stay level and go back. And you want this to be about the same depth as the front eye portion, if you can. And you also want this to have topology that mirrors the front side, usually. The reason why is these need to kind of fold down together. Sometimes you can cheat it a little bit, but for the most part, you want it to be similar. So since we have one down the center of the front, we should also have one down the center of the inside, and just spend a moment here to clean it up and make sure it's not doing anything weird. What's happening there is that's going forward. Maya's misinterpreting the placement of these. So I can move those, add the edge loop, and then move these back down. And that's usually your best bet with these areas that kind of leap forward. But we can tweak that and just get it a little bit cleaner, and that will get the inner lid. Now from here, we want to take this back into the eye pouch. The way I like to do eye pouches is just come to the back here, place down a quad, and then basically 4 quads after that. And then pull off your radial topology from this. So I'm just going to hit tab and pull this around. And this will give this a radial topology structure converging at a center point. This is minimal amount you need for like radial topology in a circular fashion. Technically, you can have radial topology around a quad, a singular quad, but this kind of gets this all set up. And then from here, we just want to somewhat aggressively just pull this forward to start building in the shape and start connecting the dots. So this is a very challenging process sometimes, but it is a convenient way to kind of terminate the interiors here. For video games, you generally just terminate this to a triangular point. You can do that for film stuff. Sometimes film stuff will actually leave the insides out, just kind of deleting these. Same with games, it just kind of varies. But for the most part, we want to get that in there. Now, since we know the outside has 8, we can actually divide each of these by 2. So just adding an edge loop across each of these, and that should match up. And then we can use tab to draw an edge loop from one point to the other. So just like this, we can quickly connect into here and basically fill in this radial topology. Now, it starts to get a little bit tricky as you start to go up and turn the corner. So I'm just going to finish the other side. And really the key to this is if you know you have the right number, you just force the connection. So I'm going to hit tab and just kind of force this over to here to where it's supposed to connect. And I usually like to do the center points first if I can. So I'm just going to hit tab to pull one of those out and look for where the center is at here and connect that in by dragging it. And I'm actually having a hard time with that, so I think I'll just go next in line. So the next one in line is going to go from here to here. And you'll notice how that inside is going to get a little twisted. I have a solution for that after the fact. We'll just hit tab there, go from there to there, and continue over tab here, from there to there. And if we did our math right, which we did, hit tab to fill in that last hole. Now from here, I just control click once to give some volume. And then if you want to soft select, you can hit B, middle mouse drag, and hold shift, and just kind of smooth the inside. Be careful not to get the outside. But if you go ahead and smooth the inside, that'll pull everything together nicely and you'll get something that just sits in here better, I guess you could say, like so. And there you go. You have your eye socket. So that's going to be the first topological structure there, is going to be the eye. You can see now, if we go ahead and take this and press 3, that's going to hold form nicely. And we can see our eyeballs inside here. If I go ahead and isolate these together, there we go. Now we have our eyes. Okay, so that is going to be the first topological structure, is going to be the eyes in their radiating form. So if you are following along with the retopology portion of this course, go ahead and get started with those eyeballs, and then we're going to work our way to the next section of the face. All right, so the next area I like to get in, ironically, is actually the lips. And you're probably thinking, wow, this guy jumps around a lot. And you are absolutely correct. I like to be able to connect things into here later after I get the course structures put in. So I do not do a linear method at all when retopologizing. Now, the mouth is pretty much the same thing as the eyes. We're going to be using radial topology again. So I like to just start with the corner of the mouth here and move up and go from there. Just have to make sure I'm clicking the right spot so Maya doesn't put it in the middle of nowhere. Now with this, I am not going to do a super tight tracing of the lips, but sometimes it can help. Kind of just coming in here and getting the base form of the lips a little bit more structured and placed like so. And coming down and doing the same thing down here. Just kind of turning the corner and getting those front lips to be a little bit better. And getting that placed into here as well. So something like that, we can add an edge loop, and that's usually enough for the outside lips there. I might want to add a couple more edge loops just to even this out a little bit, but really you don't need a whole lot here in the lip area at all. I might want to get some for the corners here, just so these aren't pitching as much. Sometimes it's nice to have a good amount of emergence from here. So I'm going to spread these out a little bit more and just kind of have a more gradual form here. And the idea here is to just give you extra support topology to open and close. This radial structure is basically going to take up this entire area here around the muzzle of the mouth. It's going to terminate along the nose, sort of, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But what I'm going to do is just hit Tab, pull this all the way up here, and hit Tab again here, and just start shaping this. We may need to add some to the mouth as we go, depending on what we need for the nose. And that's part of the reason why I like to do these in just big chunks, get the base functionality in there, and then we can kind of decide from there, if that makes sense. So just start out with these large forms here. And there we go. So that is going to give us the radial topology of the mouth. We can go ahead and add in some extra edge loops here. So maybe 2 or so edge loops. And we can hold down Shift to kind of smooth these and just get a nicer form going for the structure here. And looking at this, I might just add an edge loop here and here to even things out. Why? What's the purpose of that? We're going to need to connect these up into the face more. So yeah, it's probably going to be better to have the edge loops now and not need them yet than to need them later and not have them. Take some time to kind of spread these out. I know we wanted things even for sculpting. You still do for animation. It helps with more gradual deformation. You're just not constrained to needing perfect squares, but it doesn't hurt to have them. Next, we're going to move to the interior of the mouth, which is very much the same situation. Now, one way you can see this a little bit better is if you come in here to shading and turn on back face culling. That will get rid of the back faces, and you can see that much more clearly. We're basically just going to come along here just like we did before. We're going to create the next angle of the lip, kind of coming into here if we can. And I use the word if we can because, yeah, it's not that easy. You can see that Maya is not your best friend when it comes to this kind of stuff. And other software can be nicer. I personally use Maya. Before Maya, I used to use 3D Coat. I have not invested in any of the special stuff like Top of Gun or newer stuff. I'm aware of it, but I tend to like to minimize software where I can to reduce expense and consolidate workflows. It can be exhausting sometimes going to 20 different software packages, which I'm sure we've all felt the pain of, unless you're brand new to 3D. In which case, you probably still felt the pain of, because, hey, you're probably learning this, and the first place you started might have been with something like Blender. So, yeah, there's a lot of software out there. All right, so we're just going to continue turning the corner there and adjusting it. And keep going here to add volume to our lips. And you'll find that these cavities are some of the most painful areas all around. When it comes back to detail transferring, these are still painful. So yeah, we don't really escape the pain of the cavity. We might want to add an edge loop just to give it a bit more volume, and you'll see it's going to catch the lip more, and then just pull these back in. And that should be okay. Got to watch out for this corner area here. It gets a little bit tight, but that is going to be the base idea there behind getting this set up. So that will get a good base there. We can probably add one more edge loop, and then we're ready to get the interior cavity of the mouth going. This is as much of a pain as you would imagine. We can do it a little bit differently here. We can kind of start with these side areas and create this tunnel that's going to go down the back. We don't have to continue this tunnel all the way. If it's longer than we need, we can kind of just call it good. But we can start pulling these out, and what I like to do is kind of maintain the boxiness of the mouth here, making a clear side, top, and back. And this doesn't have to be super detailed. If you're going to have like a huge character, like a dinosaur or something that's going to open its mouth, it can be good to get a bit more detailed in here. But with a human, this is really just a place for light to die, if we're going to be honest. It's a place for you to make light not be seen anymore, just kind of a cave, a cavern, what have you. So we can treat it as such. And the other thing is we don't have an opening or a closed bottom side, I don't believe. We may have left it. Yeah, we left it open. That's usually pretty standard. You can close it off for a video game character. You don't use this many polygons. So generally you just collapse everything in the back in a triangle, just like you would the eyeballs. But with film, you have the ability to go a bit further. And we do. So there's no reason not to come in here and just get a few extra polygons to make this kind of terminate down here and not be seen anymore. You can see my symmetry got thrown off there. You do have to be careful with that in Maya. The symmetry can get confused every now and then. I don't know exactly what's confusing it. It looks like these aren't welded. So it looks like right around here, the tolerance for Maya's symmetry is just failing. And that does happen. Fair warning. The symmetry tool and quadra tool are not flawless, but that should be fine there. And what I can do from here is just kind of square these up. So for example, here to here, that is enough to connect into that. And then I can just start adding edge loops along the bottom of here to connect up into here. And you can do all sorts of creative stuff here, trying to reduce the amount of edge loops here if you want. It doesn't matter too much at the end of the day. The more we have going back there, the more of a round hole we get. But same deal here. Just add an edge loop and then shift to connect. And there we go. What I can do now is just add some more edge loops in here to smooth this out and make this not so steep. And then just hold shift to do a quick soft select and smooth this back into here. And that should work fine. Like I mentioned, there are some things we could do to kind of reduce the amount of polygons in here, optimize it a little bit better, but not really something I'm going to concern myself with at this stage. If we were doing a video game character, absolutely, we'd worry about it. But for something like a base mesh, you want to have it pretty versatile. You want to be able to go make something for game, for film, for 3D print, whatever. So it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, generally speaking. But there we go. That's going to finish off the mouth. All right. So that's going to give us the eye and mouth topology. So what I want you to do is go ahead and work on getting the mouth topology in there. You can see how that smooths out nicely, holds the form pretty good. We will get the rest of the detail back in things like normal map and displacement map, so just be aware. That's why it's so brief. And we can go ahead and move to the next features of the face following this. So go ahead and give that a shot, get that mouth in there, and then we'll explore other features. The next area I like to get in is an area which is called the face mask. The face mask is tied into the eyes. The way the face mask works is basically we have an edge loop sequence that goes down around the eyes, up and over to the brow and across like so, and looks like a face mask. It bridges across the nose, so that's probably the only key significant thing to mention here. But basically what we're going to do is just hit tab here to pull out a area. And then at some point it kind of crisscrosses here. I'm trying to think of where would be optimal. If it'd be here or somewhere else. I think maybe here. Just kind of continue this over. But it's going to come up the side of the nose and across here. And then it's just going to continue down around the face here. So we can just kind of continue this around the face here. And this is, once again, a radial edge loop. So it's going to go in a circle, but it's bridging across two topological structures. So the eyes are the topological structure, and the nose are the topological structure. So this is going to continue up here to the brow, and I'm trying to think here. I think we would run across here. Yeah, just got to move that up a little bit. And then we get into this area here where we're going to run these down here. And then from here, we get two here, one there, and then we get one here and here. So what we end up with is this shape here that runs around this brow area. And that's going to be a key area that helps with deformation. I'm just holding shift here to kind of clean things up and make things a little bit more even as we're working, kind of tidy things up. But you'll see that will create an edge loop that runs like so. Now, I don't think we actually need another edge there. We mainly just needed to get that structure in there, but that is going to be the mask. So that's going to be another one of those key areas that goes around the face. All right, and once again, edge loop from there to there. So go ahead and get the mask in there, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at the nose and nasolabial fold and their relationship to the mouth. So the next one we're going to take a look at is the nasolabial fold, and it is actually a topological structure as well as a landmark. So it's going to wrap up and around the nose and down along this area in a radial fashion. So this can be a little bit tricky to get in here, and I might have to do some tweaking on it after we get the nose in place. But long story short, the way this is going to work is we generally have one more edge right here that terminates into the angle of the nostril that goes around this base structure here, this base radial structure. So basically, there's a termination point for the nostril, and you can think of this as kind of the ramp onto the nasolabial fold. So we'll go ahead and kind of tidy that up, smooth a little bit. And then for the nasolabial fold, we're basically going to be coming up and over this. So here, and then we can align this with the edges we have above here, because we know we're going to have this. But this is going to go around the nose and around the mouth. And this is an area that is known as the laugh line. So it can give you an idea of the purpose it's going to serve in animation and why we want to have this. So it's not just a skin form. It's not just a landmark, to look for. It is actually something we care about in regards to animation. And I'm just going to come across the chin there like so and have an okay width. And usually another line here is good to get a little bit more density down into the chin. I think we could pull this underneath the chin more, actually, now that I'm looking at it. And just kind of get this to be a bit broader in general. Going around here and taking up a bit more space on the face. And kind of rounding into there a bit more evenly. So something like that. Yep, that's going to give us a decent structure there for the nasolabial fold. So once again, radial line coming up and over the nose. And then that's going to connect back here into the face mask. So we can make that connection point now, basically coming to the side here. And then we're going to resolve this into the face in a moment, but that's going to bridge across. All right, so now we have these base structures set up here. We're ready to kind of get into the nose. The nose doesn't really have any base structure. What I like to do is kind of just start with the nostrils here, just create a quad inside, and then just start pulling these out by hitting tab. And I just start with quads generally, but usually it helps to divide these into something more circular. Doesn't really matter too much at the end of the day. The nostrils are primarily expressed in textures, so we do want to make sure we can do things like nostril flares. So I am going to round those a bit. And then from here, it's usually a good idea to do radial topology around the nostril as much as possible. Not always something you can do, though. I think the interior there is probably the most important to get to be relatively radial. But at this stage, you know, if we wanted to branch out to make it so we could connect into here better, might not be a bad way to go. But usually I like to try and get a radial edge here, because that just helps with all aspects. And depending on how things are connecting, you might have to spin that interior. I kind of set them at a bit of an angle because it just kind of made sense at the time, but it might not make sense later on. Coming into here, we can just kind of divide those across very easily. And then as we get into this top part, we can continue this one forward, but make these kind of come up at an angle. So you can see we're going to get that angle to the nose. And then as we come out of here into this nostril area, it can be a good idea to do something similar. Now, this is an area where I like to give a little bit of a curve here and kind of make it come back up to give more volume to the nose. So you can see how I'm curving up and around in that area to kind of get this redirected edge. And then we can just kind of control click these down here. You'll notice at the bridge of the nose, I'm running into an issue because I don't have enough edges down here in the lip. There's a few different ways we can handle that. We could add another edge down there to the lip, or we can resolve this area differently in the nose. Like I mentioned, we can also spin this in terms of how it connects. I don't really have a good solution. We want to maintain our line of symmetry, so this one's going to win going this way no matter what. But we can take a look at this area and decide we can resolve it differently. So that's something we might want to explore. And like I mentioned, topology is not always a straightforward thing. Sometimes there is key areas of functionality. Sometimes you just need to backpedal and take a different approach at something. So here's a good example. Coming off of here, depending on how I do this, I'm going to end up with more or less edges. So this might be a good opportunity to try and find some way to terminate things earlier along this, or in a different way in terms of redirection. So what we need to find is where we're getting more edges and how to resolve them. So I could connect that down into there. And I could just add another edge loop there, and that could be one way to do it. But for the sake of this, it looks like I'd actually want another one across the nose there. So I'm going to want to get that in there and get this in here. So something like that. And to resolve that triangle, I'd probably want an edge loop somewhere. And you can see how that's going to basically cause that to turn down. So I can explore this idea of kind of turning down there. But we just got to find a way to kind of resolve that within the confines of the mess we've already put ourselves in here. I think I'm just going to add an edge loop down here to the lips, though, to make that a bit easier. And if I do so, I just got to smooth on the interior. The nice thing is this doesn't go to the bottom side because it terminates on the inside there. So we don't have to worry about it adding unneeded density. So that will kind of get us set up there. And then coming into here, we can continue to explore how to resolve these edges being too bountiful coming up into here. One way is to add another edge along the nose, and I think that's actually a fine idea, just coming along here and adding an edge, and there we go. So you can see how doing this in pieces can be useful, because we can add and subtract as needed, and kind of get a better look to things where necessary. I'm debating if I want to get another edge running down here or just use the ones I have better. I think just using the ones I have better is a good idea, so we don't blow out our polygon budget. But something like that will work just fine for the nose. So that's going to get us our nasolabial fold and the nose together, all kind of connected in there and in a singular structure. And you'll see when I press 3, that's going to hold together fairly nicely. Okay, so go ahead and work on getting the nasolabial fold in there. Go ahead and work on getting the nose in there. And then we'll go ahead and start looking at the rest of the structure, including areas like the ear. So I usually like to take a second and get the ear in here after getting in the face, because it's a complicated area and you want to make sure you have the right structure ready for it. So I'm going to select my face and just start another quad draw session here. And I'm going to start by dealing with the helix of the air. If you need to, you can select this in face mode and hit F, and then hit object mode again, and then just come back in here and start drawing out the helix again. This is one of those areas where you don't want to go absolutely crazy with. Similar to how we did in the block-in, you want to focus on capturing the silhouette of the ear, but you don't really want to worry yourself with all the minor, minute details. You can model those in if you want to, and I have done it quite often. It is pretty common to do in all reality, but you do also want to make sure this is going to be able to attach into the rest of the body. So when doing so, you want to make sure you use the radial nature of the ear topology as much as possible. So you'll see what I've done here with the helix is I've kind of created a radial edge loop. And this is a kind of an interesting trick. You can do the edge loops for the ear a lot of different ways in terms of their connection point, their termination points. But I find that doing just a radial edge loop around the outside for the helix works really well. And then we can come in and be a little bit more specific in the interior if we want with the anti-helix and other areas. Really, you don't need to, though, if I'm going to be honest. Look for the things that kind of affect deformation. So, for example, in here with the concha, I might explore, giving this a bit of a ledge and then just adding topology across here. But for the most part, you don't really need that much detail in this ear. So I might add an edge loop there, coming in here, adding an edge, coming in here, adding an edge, and just kind of getting that structure to be close would be good enough. Now, before I get ahead of myself, though, I do want to kind of close off the lobe so it's not taking up a whole bunch of topology. Something like this usually works well for these sort of corner areas where you have just enough and then it's going to round out. So something like that, you can see how that's going to smooth out okay. And then just kind of continue connecting up into here and going from there. So something like this might work. Here I'm going to just cut under again and just kind of make this work the best I can, as really just my goal here when it comes to the ear shape. Like I mentioned, you can take as much time as you want tracing out the exact ear structure. Really isn't that important at the end of the day. Main thing is to get these key areas in here that actually are going to matter. I'm going to add an edge loop to this one to get a bit more curve there and just give me a little bit more edge on the side. And then as far as this goes, this topology is a little bit wild. I might not want to go that crazy with it. We could, depending on what we want to do, actually start going this way with it to give it a little bit of a ledge and kind of have this way go this way to give itself a little bit of a ledge, because we kind of have this area here and we have this area here kind of separate. Just all depends on what you want to do. Like I mentioned, how accurate you want to make the topology in the ear. But at the end of the day, ear topology really doesn't matter too much. As long as it looks like the ear form, that's really all we're going for. There are exceptions, if you have a character that like ears are a key thing, like it flies with its ear or something, then you're going to care. But for the most part, just something like that captures the silhouette, indentations, forms, good enough. And then we're going to bring it back down into the head here. And there's a convergence here at the backside where we have that flat area. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Also with the helix here, since it's radial, I can add an edge loop here to give it volume if you're running into this issue where it's just kind of going too flat. This one I tend to like to bring down to the flat area of the ear. And just kind of continue this around front. And then we have the separation of the earlobe here, which if you have hanging earlobes, you might approach this differently. But basically, we're just going to trace around that. And this should give me the structure of the ear for the most part, like so. And then from there, we have that second area. And what can be useful is to actually kind of give this its own structure. So kind of pulling off a quad here and just finding an angle for it that works. And just kind of giving it this ledge can be a good idea. So down here is kind of where this terminates. So we'll just do the same thing here. So it's not rocket science, just something like that for the ear. If you need to, you could work another edge loop into here. I don't really advise it because it gives you so many in the front that you just don't really use. And have faith that your displacement maps are going to be enough here to kind of get this up and running. You might need to change this topology if you need different functionality of the ear. Like I mentioned, this is just kind of the ear's there. It's a structure. It's not going to be doing anything fancy in animation. So yeah. After that, I like to just give a radial edge loop base to the ear, which just makes it easier to connect into the body a little bit, I find. So here you can see that we're kind of changing the directionality here. And just getting this to go in a circle. And just continue that around. And there we go. And then as you need to, we can just round this and go from there. Okay, so that kind of gives us an ear in terms of that structure. Like I mentioned, you can do more or less with it. There is some funky stuff in my ear here, but just to show you at the end of the day, press the 3 button and you get an ear. This is a quad 1, 2, 3, 4. It just has a really weird structure to the topology, so I may want to look at that one and just resolve it differently. This is one of those situations where, maybe adding an edge loop is a better option, or even removing an edge loop. If I can get rid of this edge loop and just kind of resolve these differently, like this going up into here, and then somewhere around here. Are triangles the end of the world? No. You could definitely keep triangles if you want. So if I wanted to, I could do that. They're a little bit less ideal if you're going to do subdivision, so it's usually better to resolve that into a quad, which I could do here. I think maybe kind of revisiting that area to think about the best way to handle that would be a good idea. I'm sure there's somewhere on here where I have gone astray and could be doing this better. Something like that is a good example there. But I just realized that didn't fix my issue up here. All right, so I would want that. I mean, the simple solution is to have another edge loop up top and just kind of run this out the side here. So actually, I didn't need that last time, so just like that. And I think that might be the better way to go. Usually you need a bit more around the top for the roundness, so I'm not opposed to that. But you can kind of rework those as needed. And like I mentioned, you can take more time tracing out the form, but at the end of the day, something like this is going to work fine, and the rest of the detail is going to come from normal maps and displacement maps. So go ahead and give it a shot, get an ear in there, and then we'll move forward with connecting the rest of the face together. So the next stage we want to do is essentially resolve the face, and there is a lot going on with the face. Let's go ahead and talk a bit about that. As far as this goes, we're going to start turning things back around this area. So what I'm going to do is just hit Tab here and basically angle that back, do the same thing here. So right around the buccinator area, just kind of draw a line back into the ear area. And then from here, it's going to continue down this way, like so. Generally, it follows the jaw a bit under the chin here. So this doesn't really change too much here. Like so. And you can hit Shift to smooth that out. And this is going to continue back into the ear. So we can hit Tab here to kind of do a large chunk. This down here is going to follow the jawline. Jawline's generally going to come up here like this and kind of aim things back for us a little bit, which is kind of nice. You can see that kind of terminates an edge loop there. So usually you have a nice jaw structure, and then we can continue this up. This is a bit closer to the ear than I wanted to be doing this, but getting that jaw structure in there can be nice. So you have the underside of the jaw, and then getting in here to the ear and connecting across here and here so that you get sort of the side of the head going and up into the eye. Now, the ear connection is one of those really annoying ones where you just kind of hope you have a one-to-one connection going into it. You almost never do, so just fair warning. But basically, you can just kind of shift-click here and hope things work out. And yeah, it kind of did a little bit there. We could mix things up as we get down into this area. So, for example, here, that can start to go up and over. But that's part of the reason I like to use a radial edge here to the ear, because it's kind of a catch-all at the end there. It just kind of catches everything and allows you to have this broader circular area into the ear. But yeah, that's basically going to connect that across. And then from here, we can just continue these up to start developing the upper portion of the head until we hit the turning point of the ear here, wherever we decide that is. And just kind of pull those back and continue this back into the back of the head. You do want to be careful you don't have too much density coming off of that ear, but at the end of the day, it's not the biggest deal, because if it's terminating into the head, it's disappearing. The rest of these ones kind of going down from the ear, those are areas we do need to concern ourselves with because they are going to branch into the neck. So these ones might matter a bit more. We can always turn them up sooner if we need to, but just patching in an area like that around the ear is pretty much all you have to do to resolve that side of the head. Now, when it comes to the top of the head, it's a bit different. I usually like to block this in like a helmet. So what we get is we get sort of a square for the front of the head here. Then we get a square for the side. And then we get to the back. And we'll just connect that in here. And then these are going to converge at the top in one of our little turtle shell type structures. So we're just going to set up quads here, and then we can shift click around here to get to the top of the head. And you might find, hey, I have too many or too little. That's fine, just adjust it. And the reason why we do it this way is it allows us to do essentially infinite edges this direction and infinite edges this direction. But we do want to add some termination points. So for example, a good example here would be like the eyes. We don't really need these going all the way up into here. So what I might do is just right here on this section, redirect these so they're only looping down. And that will reduce the edges going into the head by about 1 edge on either side, which comes out to 2. Then we can continue these across and up. And then we can add the necessary edge loops running across the top of the head here to just kind of resolve these and push them towards the back side of the head. But that is going to essentially connect all these front ones here. And we can actually pick a front point here, which sometimes helps. Maybe right around the zygomatic there would be a good choice. But then we just keep coming around here, adding an edge, adding a vertex, adding an edge, adding a vertex, until we have resolved the cranium. So you'll see it's kind of nice. It's a bit like a sphere in the regards that it all just kind of terminates and goes somewhere. I am going to spread out the backside a little bit more. And we can also insert some edge loops here, since these are radial. I'm just going to hold down Control. And then up here, it's getting a bit messy. I'm going to hit B, soft select, make my soft select real big, and just hold Shift to smooth. And that's going to smooth out that cranium area. And you'll see it's just going to stretch over this area like a shower cap at this point and give us a decent connection. And that's pretty much what we're looking for. So I am going to just kind of spread these a little bit more and add these as we need them, but continue resolving the remainder of the head here. And you'll see there we're hitting an area that goes up and over everything. We got to be careful with that. That's the turn point of the head. It'd be good to put there because you're not going to terminate a pole any further. And as far as this backside edge goes here, I can push this out further. So kind of holding Shift to just smooth these and get them to be a bit nicer. This was another reason to add the radial topology to the ear. You can see we can spread these base edges from the ear and not really impact the ear at all. Gives us a nice little buffer point. And then we can move to the back side of the head. On the back side of the head for this ridge, I like to just angle this up to kind of naturally catch this. And what's cool about angling this up is it allows us to catch some of those areas coming from out of the head and wrap them around here. But the back side of the head is essentially going to look like this. And it's going to be a combination of catching the ones that run that way this way and the ones that run that way this way. So I can just kind of spread this out and get to it. Let me resolve this here and pull this up. And it looks like we have at least one more row to go here, so I'll just connect this to here like that. And then when it comes to this area, we can just kind of resolve as many of this as we feel we need to. And this is actually going to resolve them all the way down the torso here. So just be mindful that when using this, you could drastically reduce the amount of edges going into the head. I think that should be enough on the backside there. So I'm going to leave it at that. And then as far as these go, we have a ton of density here. But the cool thing is this density just is going to wrap around the head. It's not going to go and get stuck in the body anywhere with this method. So it gives us a bit more control. And with hair being at the back side of the head, we can delete as many of these as we need usually, or triangulate it if needed. So it's actually really convenient to have that as sort of a conversion point. And same with the top. These are the areas we have the most density. So very convenient for kind of getting rid of hair, or getting rid of poly count, hiding it in the hair. All right, so that's going to finish off the first big form here, which is going to be the head. We still have some areas to get into, like the neck area here. Not really a whole lot going on with this. You can decide how you want to go about doing this. A lot of the times what I like to do is make a connection here. Where these kind of wrap up and around a bit more. So you can see what I'm doing there. And this is another way we can kind of control the number of edges coming off of the head and reduce them down a little bit, because we can take these side ones here and kind of wrap them into this. And it depends on how far we want to go. We could probably grab one extra there to get that angle of the head here. And then coming into here, we'll have these. And then we'll want one more down the middle of this, like so. And that will kind of create the base of the head. And we're going to spread these out because they are very compacted. But something like that can help resolve the front of the head a little bit more. And we can always delete one of these edges. Like, for example, here, I could delete that edge because we probably don't need it now that I'm looking at the density here. And we can just spread these over this area more. But that can be a useful little trick there to resolve more of the head topology as it runs towards the front of the body. And those will all kind of mix and continue back and go down. Which brings the next point. Eventually you want your neck to just be a line, if we're going to be honest. So at some point here, what you want to do is kind of figure out where that happens. So right there is kind of a good point, I would say, to just kind of draw the line, quite literally, and have that curve down and come forward into the lower area here. And I feel like we have quite a bit of density coming off of there, and I'm going to regret it, but we'll see. I can just hit tab to drag this whole area down now, and that will give me the head for the moment, and we can explore resolving some of these edge loops later if we need to. One area that is obvious is down here. We could kind of continue this a bit down here, I guess. But you can actually use this as kind of a feedback loop. So that will terminate a handful of these, but we could add, maybe one more edge here and grab an edge there, and that works out there to kind of terminate some of these. And just kind of continue this across. Now, something I want you to notice is I am not following the muscles. You do not follow the muscles with topology, generally speaking. There are some exceptions where you might trace them a little bit in video games, but all that muscle detail is going to be captured in normal maps and displacement maps, generally speaking. And if you're doing higher end simulations for film, the muscle simulation is going to be what causes that on a very dense mesh. So we're not worried in the least about getting that detail in here, just to kind of emphasize that we're mainly looking at functionality when we're rebuilding topology for animation. So form, structure, that is going to be something we're going to let the texturing handle, so to speak. Now I'm going to continue this down here to kind of the base of the neck. The neck kind of just creates a sort of necklace, almost a collar, if you will, that connects into the torso. So I can block that in here real big and blocky. And there we go. Something like that. Just kind of tie that in together and smooth it, and that's going to give us our head. So that is going to, I want to say finish off the head. We might have to revisit a few areas on the head, but that is for the most part going to get the head in there. So that is kind of the structure that we're going for with the head. We can add more or less edge loops if we need to there, but that is going to give us our head topology at the end of the day and kind of connect everything together there. And you'll see when I press 3, we're starting to get that form back, but now with clean animation-ready topology. So let's go ahead and move on. Let's save, and we're going to move into the next area of the body that I like to move to, which is going to be the hands.